Hi everyone, today will be either the last or second to last one of these CSD off-the-cuff videos that I record. Um, have my review in a couple of days. So for anyone who's just joining, I'm doing these off-the-cuff lessons where I randomly select a learning objective from the Certified Scrum Developer class, and I take 5 minutes to prep how I'm going to teach it, and then 20 minutes to actually teach it. I'm practicing for a panel review. In that review, I will have to use either a whiteboard or flip chart. I'm actually going to be using my tablet for these just because it's a little bit easier. As usual, I hope this is valuable for the learning, as well as if you're also going for your review from Scrum Alliance, maybe you can get some ideas of how you want to approach things yourself. And of course, feedback is always welcome. I'm doing this to learn. So without further ado, let's dive in and check out our topic for the day. And it is refactoring. So comprehensions is a little bit deeper than that knowledge level, just repeat back. I have to validate understanding. 4.2, describe at least 3 benefits of refactoring to an agile software development effort. All right, I'm going to start my 5-minute timer and we will jump in. All right, so my 5 minutes is done. Let's dive into the topic. Again, this is about refactoring. It was, look over here at the learning objective, describe at least 3 benefits of refactoring to an agile software development effort. So we'll start at 20 minutes. And one of the things that I'm asked to do inside of this panel review is say, hey, where am I at in the class? Now, this is, again, a little weird. I know I'm repeating myself for people who have seen this before. Because of the constraints that are on me with only being able to use this, this limited supplies, I'm not going to be teaching this the way I would in a class. We would be actually doing a lot of things. But what are some of the things we would talk about? I'm going to refer to test-driven development, so that will have happened before. We're going to talk about emergent architecture. That would have happened before. And I'm actually going to merge this a little bit with what is refactoring. Now, the other thing, at a little bit of a meta level, I'm supposed to share with this panel is we're supposed to talk about what is and is not Scrum. And I want to call that out, again, part of my practice, less because probably viewers care. None of this is Scrum. So this is something people forget. A lot of what we're doing in this certified Scrum developer class is not actually focused on Scrum. It's focused on practices developers who are working in a Scrum environment will find helpful to succeed. And this is one of them. So let's dive in. Refactoring. So what is refactoring? And usually what we do inside of a class, and we do this for the panel, and maybe for anyone watching, take a moment, hit pause. What is refactoring? If you have a piece of scratch paper, go ahead and jot down your definition. And then I would want to ask, what is it, right? And part of the reason for this is refactoring is actually something we do all the time. So people come up with some definitions. It's changing stuff. It's making it work a little better. It's come up with a bunch of different definitions. And for the most part, they'll either match or piece together to match the definition that I usually use, which is that refactoring is changing something about an application, so making refactors to an application, to its code that help it be more readable, help it be more maintainable, help it be more testable, but do not change the outward-facing behavior of that application, right? So from an outside user point of view, I haven't really changed anything, but from an inward-facing view, I've changed something to improve how well it's built. So let me maybe jot a note down here. Change the app, better maintainability, better testability, better readability. Some people would say better performance. That's a little bit of a gray area. I'm not I don't personally, to me that's an outward behavior. I would not consider that refactoring, but that's a gray area. You get different arguments, and if that's your definition, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you on it. So remember, the learning objective is describe at least 3 benefits in agile software development. So this is the first one, right? And this is actually true of all refactoring. It doesn't matter if you're in agile or not. You get better maintainability, better testability, better readability. That means that when I come back to this area of code, it's easier for me to maintain. It's easier for me to change, even if I'm not the person who worked on it the first time. So that's where especially this testability and readability come in as very, very important. Right? All right, so that's not part of Agile. That's just refactoring in general. What about Agile specifically? So the next 2 things that I'll say are specific about Agile. One is that I'm going to be regularly working refactoring into my process. So when I'm doing this, for example, when we talked about test-driven development, I'm going to make a brief diagram. And if you don't know what test-driven development is for this call, I'm not going to get into great detail, but here's what I do want to say. I've got a step 1. I've got a step 2. And then I refactor, right? So in test-driven development, we talk about, we have step 1, step 2, refactor. Step 1, step 2, refactor. Step 1, step 2, refactor. Why do I do this? Well, I'm doing this so that my refactoring efforts don't get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So I am refactoring regularly. And this keeps the refactoring efforts lower. So why do I want to keep the refactoring efforts lower? Well, if you've ever worked on any kind of product, you've probably experienced the situation where you go, hey, we're going to run into a problem if we don't make this big change. We're on that old architecture. We should upgrade it. Hey guys, we should really make that change. And it keeps getting kicked off and kicked off and kicked off. Well, why does it get kicked off? Because a lot of times when they say, okay, great, how long will that take? Well, I don't know. That could take 2 weeks. It could take 3 weeks. It kind of depends on how messy things are and what things come up that are unexpected. And someone goes, that's a long time to not be developing new features. Sorry, we'll have to do that next month. Or we'll have to do that next year to do that day, that big upgrade. And it keeps getting kicked off further and further and further down the line. So one of the reasons that we refactor regularly is it keeps us paying down those things small, as opposed to having this massive effort that we build up and then having to try to do that, have a refactor sprint or what have you. Additionally, doing this helps me balance building the right thing, so building new features, versus building the thing right. So exercising good craftsmanship. So I want you to imagine you're building a house, and you get onto the site, and the foreman's there and says, okay, so here's what we're doing. We do this a little bit differently than most builders. We want the house up. Don't care about code. Doesn't matter. I don't care where, you're going to just put that framing in. I don't care if it's 16 inches on center. I don't care if it's 30 inches on center. As long as the stupid thing stays up, that's fine. I don't care how you put the pipes in for the plumbing. Doesn't matter. Just get it up. Just get it standing. Then, once the whole house is built, we're going to go back through and we're going to change everything to make sure that it meets code before the inspector shows up. You'd probably walk off the site. You'd be like, I'm not doing this. That sounds awful. Twice the amount of work. Well, this is what happens when we don't pay down our technical debt. This is what this is getting towards, technical debt, regularly. And we do that through these refactoring efforts, right? So we're going to balance, build it, but build it well. Build the next thing, but build it well. Build the next thing, but build it well, right? And so we're finding balance between building the right thing and building it right, new features and craftsmanship, and we're keeping that effort to build it well low. So this is the second benefit, right? Our first benefit is that better maintainability, better testability, better readability. The second benefit is these small efforts to find that balance between the two. So the third one, we're going to tie back into a conversation we would have had about emergent architecture and technical debt. And one of the things that we would have talked about is we would have talked about work profiles. So I think actually talked about this in a previous video, but regardless. So in work profiles, we talk about, see how to keep this short. Basically, that early in a project, we have a lot of feature development. And if we allow technical debt to build, we end up having a lot of like bugs and maintenance, right? Having to take care of working around that technical debt. We'll just kind of call this maintenance for the sake of this lesson. And this extra maintenance work comes at the expense of feature work. And what that does, this is the most important part, is if I were to do a value curve over time, so value over time, I would have a curve that looks like this, right? So yeah, sure, slow starts always happen, life. But I very quickly move into a high value curve so I get a lot of value for the time I spend working here on a lot of new features. But as that maintenance builds up, as I'm working around my technical debt because I'm not doing refactoring efforts regularly, right? It takes longer and longer to create those features. And I table off, I plateau off on that value curve. Now, of course, right, like I keep creating value, but it takes longer and longer and longer to create it. I don't want this, right? If I'm paying it down regularly, this curve looks different. I get that high value, a little bit gets in there, and then I keep, as it starts tapering off, I pull it back up, right? So I get a lot more value in the end for the time that I'm putting in, right? So this is what I want, and that's my third value statement from refactoring. So again, all refactoring, any refactoring that you do is going to give you this benefit of better maintainability, testability, and readability. Refactoring in agile software development gets you these regular small batch refactors, which help you balance your craftsmanship and your new feature development, and they allow you to have a higher value for the time that you put in that value curve, because you're not building up that maintenance work, which comes from having to work around the technical debt that you're not paying down by refactoring. So there you go. 3 key benefits to refactoring inside of agile software development. All right, so that was our refactoring one. I guess a little bit of reflection. I'm often torn on these, and and especially if people are watching this and giving feedback who are CSTs who have been through this process. one of the challenges that I have here is it feels very lectury, and I called out where we could do a little bit of interactivity. Um, in hindsight, I think there are a couple other places I could insert some activities. I'm always really torn because the reality is this is not what the class would feel like. It just isn't, and that's because we're limited in our research. Like, we would be out using different tools, trying different things. We do teach back activities where people look at refactoring patterns and talk about what benefit they bring and why you would use them and how they've used them before. And we do all these different things. None of that fits here because we can't use any other resources. So it kind of pushes into this lecture. And one of the things I'm trying to balance is, do I just do that and that's fine, and I just trust the people on the panel to understand the constraints that we're in, and that of course this has zero reflection on how a class is taught, or do I like wedge in these random activities just for the sake of showing that I can do activities? Not really sure. Stuck on that one. So any feedback would be great. Past that, I hope the information was useful to people watching, and I will catch up with y'all on the next video later this week.